So, to tell about our guest for today's discussion, Dr. Manoj Rathinaswamy has graduated with his PhD in protein biochemistry from the University of Victoria in Canada. He did his bachelor's in industrial biotechnology at Anna University, and he was also the gold medalist of his batch of students. Having his specializations in the areas of biochemistry, structural biology, and mass spectrometry, Dr. Manoj is interested in exploring the mechanisms by which proteins function. Over the course of his PhD, he used a combination of biochemical assays, structural techniques like X-ray crystallography, cryo-electron microscopy, and mass spectrometry to characterize the enzymes called PI3 kinases, which are implicated in cancer and immune disorders. His research has provided significant insight into the working of these enzymes and the ways by which they can be better targeted in a disease. As part of his next career step, he is aspiring for opportunities in industry where he can leverage his skills to engineer useful proteins and assist in the development of better therapeutics. Our next guest for today's event is Sharon, who is currently a senior research associate at Deep Genomics, Toronto in Canada. She did her bachelor's in industrial biotechnology at Anna University and went on to pursue her master's studies at the McGill University in Canada. At Deep Genomics, she uses machine learning models to identify oligonucleotides for drug therapy. Sharon, and welcome, Manoj. Let me start the question and answer session. So let me start with the most fundamental question for any higher education abroad. So what are the necessary entrance examinations to take for getting an admission in Canada? Like, is it necessary to take the GRE exam? And among the two English proficiency tests like IELTS and TOEFL, which is the widely accepted one? Whether the IELTS or TOEFL?
Okay. So for Canada, I think the GRE is not needed. It's not compulsory like how it is in the US. And between TOEFL and IELTS, I gave TOEFL, but then I think IELTS is widely more accepted in Canada. And just like in case you're applying for your PR or whatsoever after that, it's just more useful to give the IELTS.
Do you have any exceptions to tell? Do you know any universities which accepts TOEFL exceptionally, or?
No, I think most universities accept both. So when I applied to McGill, I gave TOEFL and it was fine. So I think either or it's fine. It's entirely up to you. But IELTS is just generally more well known here.
Okay. So, Manoj, do you have something to add on to Sharon's answer? Hello, Manoj. So, do you have something to tell for this question regarding the entrance examinations?
Okay. No? Sorry,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was speaking, but I mean, I don't think you were able to hear me. So I gave the TOEFL when I was applying for universities, and I think it was accepted widely. And I think Sharon is right when she says IELTS is more useful when it comes to like permanent residency and stuff. So I'd recommend doing the IELTS if you want to. I think it's just more useful in the long run. I mean, if you want to stay in Canada for a long time, I think IELTS is more useful. But I think even TOEFL is sort of becoming optional because I mean, as long as your medium of instruction for your undergraduate program is English, I don't think they're very strict about it. But I don't think it hurts. It hurts to like write the English proficiency exam. GRE is definitely not needed, and even in the US, a lot of universities are removing GRE as a requirement. And I think in the near future, GRE would be completely gone as a requirement. I think it'll still be optional, but I don't think it'll be compulsory anymore, even in the US. So I think GRE is a waste of money if you want to apply to Canadian university.
So the next question is, so can you tell about the application procedure for a master's program and a PhD program in Canada? What are the general requirements for a master's program and a PhD program separately? Can you briefly tell the overall procedure so that the students who are not aware about the procedure can get to know?
Okay, I can go first. So for the master's program, the one that I did was the non-thesis program. So there are two different streams that you can take. You can either take the non-thesis or the thesis. So the major difference between the two of them is that if you take the thesis program, you will basically be working in a lab full time, just like a PhD researcher would, for the entire duration of your course. So if you are taking the thesis track, then you will have to write to a professor well in advance to get like an approval to into their lab, and you'll have to probably write like a research plan, and you have to of course make sure that your interests are aligned with the professor, and they should also have funding to take you on. So that is the thesis track. For the non-thesis program, basically till admission, you just have to give yeah you if TOEFL or IELTS is required, you have to do that. Then you will have to have your references. You will have to write a statement of purpose, SOP, and after that you just have to do the regular application. So basically the major difference is that you don't need to get accepted into a lab or whatsoever to apply to the non-thesis program.
Okay, so which according to you is a better one, whether the thesis program or the non-thesis program? What according to you will be a better master's program?
Okay, that's a good question because I really, really think that depends on the individual. Because I think if you are really specific and passionate about research, it's a great option to do the thesis program, especially because in many Canadian universities, there is the option of converting your thesis, your master's thesis into a PhD program. So if you are on the PhD track and you're very sure that you want to work towards a PhD, I would suggest the thesis program. In terms of non-thesis, like personally, I chose the non-thesis program because I wasn't sure about a PhD and I wanted to work in the industry. So the specific program that I chose, so out of the 4 semesters, I did 2 semesters of coursework. So just and after that, I did 2 semesters of what we call as co-op here, basically like an internship for 8 months. So I started my internship with Deep Genomics, where I currently work, and then I just got hired full time. So I think if you're looking for an industry job and you're really not sure about your PhD, then I think the non-thesis program would be a better option. However, in terms of cost, the non-thesis program will cost you much more because you will not be getting a stipend for working in a lab. But it'll balance out because you will instead be doing an internship in an industry. So that's the difference, yeah.
Yeah, so regarding a PhD, do you have something to tell Manoj? Like what is the procedures for applying a PhD program? And
So, so the thing is, in Canada, you need to have a master's if you want to directly apply for a PhD. So I actually started as a master's student, and at least in my university, for biochemistry or like microbiology, you only had a thesis-based master's. You did not have a course-based master's. So I joined a thesis-based master's, and I definitely wanted to do a PhD. So I think midway through my second year, I transferred to a PhD. So if you want to transfer to a PhD, you do like a candidacy exam. So you basically present your research, and if you can convince your faculty committee that your research is going well, they will let you do it. It's basically a formality. It's not like a big thing, but yeah, you can always transition from a master's to a PhD. I've seen plenty of people who are unsure of whether they wanted to do a PhD, so they just basically, if they didn't want to do a PhD, they just stopped with a thesis-based master's. Yeah, and as Sharon said, I think if you do a thesis-based master's, you get a stipend, so it's almost like you're a full-time employee of a lab. But obviously, in academia, you get paid much less than in industry. So I think if you do a co-op in industry as a non-thesis based master student, I think you get paid much more than when in academia. But it basically gets balanced out because you get paid throughout your thesis-based masters, while in your non-thesis-based masters, you get only paid when you're an intern. So I think if you're sure of you don't want to like be in academia, you definitely want to go in industry. I think masters could be a good option. But if you want to do a lot of research, I think even PhD students. I mean, I'm an example of a PhD student who wants to go into industry, and I think there is definitely an advantage of doing that because if you're a PhD graduate, you can always get hired as a scientist. But if you're a master's student, you get hired as a research associate, which I mean, you can basically go through a research associate position and become a scientist eventually. But if you do a PhD, you can directly get hired as a scientist in the industry. So I think there's still a lot of PhD students now going into industry because I think academia is just basically too saturated. So yeah, you can always go into industry whenever you want. You can do a PhD and go into industry. You can do a thesis-based master's and go into industry, or you can go into industry with a non-thesis-based master's. It's just I think if you're an intern at a company when during your masters, you always make a network, and I think having that network is very valuable if you want to get an industry job. And I think that's what Sharon means when she says, she was an intern at the company and then she got eventually hired because she can network. I think that's the added advantage you get when you can intern at a company instead of working in a lab full time. But I think if you really are passionate about research or you're unsure about if you want to do a PhD, I think doing a thesis-based master's is a nice idea, but if you just want to do coursework and get some basic lab skills, I think doing a non-thesis-based master's is a good idea. There's nothing like one thing is better than the other. It's absolutely up to someone's personal preference. Yeah, that's my view of that.
Yeah, that was a very detailed answer, Manoj. So thank you for the detailed answer. I think Akshaya is waiting in the audience to have a question. So I have invited her to speak on stage. Um, I think she has a doubt. So Akshaya, can you please accept the invitation and ask your doubt? Yeah, Akshaya, you can go ahead with your question. So Akshaya, can you hear me? And do you have any questions to ask? I think she has difficulty with unmuting herself. So let me proceed with the next question so that we can uh, wait for her to sort out the issue. So regarding the admission seasons in Canada, like in USA, we have two admission seasons, like the fall season and the spring season. In Canada, also, do we have two admission seasons per year, and which, according to you, is the ideal season for applying? The fall season or the spring season?
Yeah, we do have two seasons. They do have the fall and the spring season. I think Manoj can probably speak better to this for the thesis program. I think you have the option, and I guess it depends on the professor's lab intake and all of that. But for the non-thesis program, which is the one I did and I'm a little more aware of, it's better to apply the specific course that all the courses that I had applied for, they all had intake only in the fall semester, unfortunately. And the thing is that it is usually better to get into this fall semester, even if they do have fall and spring, just because, I mean, this is just my personal preference, especially depending on which coast or which city in Canada you're going to. I think it's just overall, just mentally and just nicer to settle in into the cold, to come in the fall and to just settle in. And in terms of courses also, like for coursework, I found that, if you come in the fall season, there are more options because some of the courses are available only in the fall and not available in the spring. And I found that a lot of the courses that I wanted to do, the more common ones and the ones that generally people are interested in, they were available only in the fall. And yeah, just overall, I think if you're applying to Canada, especially if you're applying to go to one of the colder cities, I would suggest coming in the fall. And yeah, I think Manoj can add to it.
Yeah, so for the thesis-based master's program, it's pretty flexible because it's basically the application to a thesis-based master's program is a formality because if you get the approval of a PI, it's pretty much you will get in 100%. I mean, you're just applying for the sake of formally applying to the program, but I think it's really up to the PI to decide if you're getting in or not. So if the PI likes you and is willing to accept you into his or her lab, you can definitely get into the program. So at least for the University of Victoria where I studied, there were 3 semesters per year. So there was a fall semester, there was a spring semester, and then there was let me think about this. There was a summer semester as well. So I joined in the spring. So I started in January because I got accepted into my boss's lab basically like 3 months before January. So I started in the January session because that was like the very next semester to start. So it's pretty flexible. You can start whenever you want if you want to join a thesis-based master's program. But again, there is still some coursework that you need to do, like at least in the first few years of your. Even if you want to do a PhD, you still need to do those courses. Those courses won't take a lot of your time. You basically spend maybe like 2 or 3 hours a whole week doing some courses, but you definitely need to finish those courses. And a lot of those courses actually start in fall. So even if you join in January, you'll have to wait till the fall to actually do those courses. So that's the only real, I mean, I don't think that's a big issue. So the courses will start in the fall. So you'll basically be joining the people who are coming in fall to do your courses, but you can always start working in the lab immediately. So I started working in the lab in January and I started doing my courses in the fall and I eventually was able to finish it. So yeah, so it's pretty flexible for a thesis-based master's program.
Yeah, so I think Harsha has a question and he's on stage. So Harsha, can you unmute yourself and go with your question?
Hello, good evening, everybody. Actually, I'm pursuing my master's here in biotechnology and would like to, continue my PhD there in Canada. So I wanted to know best which can, matlab, the thing is, I want to do it as a research intern, and as a, what do we call it as? Assistant teacher, which is there which they are provided, and for that they take the wave of the tuition fees and all, so this kind of stuff I was looking for. So which universities are best in this kind of stuff?
I just want to understand your question more clearly. So let me just clarify a few things. So what you mean is you want to do a PhD, but you want to be an RA. I'm guessing a research assistant in a lab, or you want to be a teaching assistant to basically, I think, waive off the fees. Is that what you're asking? Am I right
Yeah,
when I say
correct,
this?
correct, sir, correct, completely correct.
Okay. So the way it worked in my university is you obviously have tuition fees in Canada. That's the thing that's different in the US. In the US, you don't pay any tuition. Your lab pays the tuition for you. So that's different. In Canada, you pay tuition, but it's not as high as in the US. You can definitely, bear it with your stipend. So your stipend is much more than the tuition fee. So you can live off your stipend and pay your tuition fee. So that's not the problem. But so since for your PhD or your master's, you're working in a particular lab, the PI basically decides how much stipend you're going to get. There's a minimum stipend for your program. Some PIs will stick to the minimum. A lot of the PIs actually tend to give more money than the minimum that's set by the department because minimum is always pretty low for the cost of living in whatever city you want to live. So the way it works is your professor pays you, your PI pays you money from their research grants to pay your stipend. Okay. So on top of that, you can choose to work in a lab or you can teach as an RA or TA. That's possible in any university. It's not like only a certain university allows that. But then your PI can choose to, deduct their stipend and, so say for example, you're getting $25,000 a year, okay, from your PI. But then you want to do some RA work. And then from your RA work, you're able to RA or TA work. You're able to make, say, $5,000 a year. I mean, that's pretty low, but just for an example. So your PI can actually either choose to let you have that 5,000 on top of the 25,000 that the professor is paying, or they can actually decide to, deduct the 5,000 from the stipend they are paying. But so at the end of the day, you still get 25,000. If you get what I mean, it's because the time you spend as an RA or TA is actually taking away from the lab time. Some PIs tend to do that. My boss did that, but I did not want to do an RA or a TA. So there is actually a minimum requirement. So you definitely have to do an RA or TA as a PhD student because it's one of the requirements for your degree. So you need to do some coursework, you need to finish your thesis, and you have to do a certain number of hours as an RA or a TA. So I did those hours as those minimum hours. I didn't prefer to do an RA or TA, so that was not a problem. But some labs, the professors actually wanted their students to do RA or TA so that they can basically take the pressure off their grants, because they can then pay less. So there is no particular university or city where you can make a lot of money as an RA or TA. It's entirely up to your PI if to decide if you want to make extra money as an RA or TA, or you just get paid the same amount of money at the end of the day. So I think if you want to work as an RA or TA, I don't know if doing a PhD is the right choice. If that's your aim, if you really like to do research and you want to, you like spending a lot of time thinking about the science you want to do and the research you want to do, I think then you want to do a PhD. Otherwise, if you want to be an RA or TA, you can always do a master's and also be an RA or TA. That's also possible. So yeah, that's basically what I think.
Yeah, so as you said, for a thesis-based master's program, since we have to get acceptance from a PI, when is the ideal time for emailing the professor? So if we have to join for the fall season, which is the ideal time to start emailing for the professors?
Okay, so I started in January and I got accepted in September. So that was 3 months. So I was able to apply. So after I got accepted, I had to formally apply to the program, and that process took me a month. And then once I got like accepted formally, I got all the documents for my visa, and my visa process took roughly around 3 weeks, but it can always take longer. So I'd recommend doing it 5 to 6 months. I'd say 6 months is a good time. So 6 months in advance should be good. But again, that's only to like give enough time for you to apply to the program and get accepted and apply for your visa. 6 months in advance, it doesn't necessarily mean that the PI has space for you in the lab 6 months in advance. That's entirely up to the PI and the status of their lab. So yeah, just to give enough time for your visa and your application, I think 6 months is a good time.
Yeah, okay. So what is the professor's expectation when they actually look for master students? Like some people believe that it is necessary to have a publication in undergraduation itself to get a master's degree. So is it like that, or what they actually expect from the students when they give
Okay.
acceptance for a master's program?
Yeah, so I did not have a publication going into my master's slash PhD. I had absolutely no publications, and I think it's completely fair to not have publications. I think the vast majority of students don't have publications because I think the time they spend in the lab as an undergrad is not enough time to do like really productive research. I think it's just an opportunity to learn techniques and to understand lab dynamics and stuff. So always remember the vast majority of your competition also does not have publications. I think a lot of it lies in having. I think a lot of professors will expect experience, and I understand that in the midst of this pandemic, a lot of students have not been able to gain that experience. And I think professors also understand that. But I think what professors are really looking for, besides experience, is genuine interest. So I think you really need to look into their publications and you really need to convince them that you're interested and you really want to, you're really passionate about doing the same kind of research that they're doing. I think that's what they're looking for. So I'd say because a lot of people have not been able to get experience due to this pandemic. I think you really need to do some research, and you really need to go into their papers, understand what they're doing. Up to a certain degree. I mean, you're not a grad student, you're not a PhD student yet, so I mean, they don't expect you to know everything. But still, I think going through a few of their papers and really like telling them what you liked about those papers would go a long way in helping you, win a place in their lab. I mean, other than that, I think the funding situation in the lab is a big factor. If they don't have enough money, they're not going to accept you. And obviously, space also is a huge thing. If the lab is full, they're not going to accept you. So I think if funding and lab space is not an issue, then I think genuine interest and experience are the two things that are going to help your application.
Yeah, so Sharon, do you have something to add on to this answer? Because I think you had some experience as a professional before going for your master's. So, how did your experience help you getting the master's?
Yeah, yeah, definitely to add to what Manoj said, that I think you don't have to necessarily have a publication for the program. And as far as I have seen in Canada, like they really, really look at your interest. I mean, apart from the factors he mentioned, like space constraints and funding constraints, I really do think it's about your interest, how you develop a relationship with them from the very beginning. Taking that interest to get to know people in their lab, their work, their publications, and just really going that extra mile, I think will really, really help. I don't really necessarily think that experience or in even for a non-thesis program, you do not need to have any industry experience before you apply. As long as you've got, I think you do. Most universities here, you do need a decent GPA. I'm not very sure about I do know that specifically I'm not sure about the numbers, but I do know that you need somewhere above at least I think at least a 3 on 4 to be able to apply to most of the courses. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah, so I think Nabarun has a question, so he's on stage to ask his question. Nabarun, you can go ahead with your question.
Am I audible?
Yeah, yeah.
So what I was asking is how important is research experience if I'm going to apply for a PhD in Canada?
Yeah, so I mean, research experience is probably top on the list of things you'd want in your CV. I think because the for a PhD program, it's a long-term investment because you're going to spend like minimum of like 4 years, a maximum of maybe 6 to 7 years if you're unlucky. I mean, the PI is going to make a long-term investment in you. They're basically taking money out of their research funds, which they have like painstakingly written grants for and stuff like that. So it's a long-term investment, and they want obviously some research productivity and stuff like that. So if you have the experience, if you know the techniques and if you know like how the experiments work, and if you have like all that research experience, I think it really goes a long way in helping an application. For a PhD, yes, I think research experience is the number one thing on the list of things you need to have. But I think in like today's situation, I think research experience is pretty hard to come by. I mean, unless you are doing like computational biology or something where you can be remote. So research experience is really important. Is my point. Yeah.
So what do you suggest how someone gets research experience now if they are to apply in about less than a year or more than a year at hand?
Okay. So yeah. So research experience. The only way you're going to get research experience now is if you can spend like a summer in a lab. So yeah, like doing an internship is basically the one of the ways you can get research experience. The other thing is you can also work in like a I don't know in a company where you can get the same skills. I mean, if you're in life sciences, obviously there are a lot of pharma companies where you can get that experience. But I think if you want to do a PhD, the best way to get research experience is to apply for an internship, work in a lab. I mean, it could be in India, right? Like you don't have to go abroad for that. I mean, you just basically need to know. I mean, in your CV, you'll obviously put in the techniques that you learned in your practical classes. I mean, in your lab classes as an undergrad, but a lot of the people will have the same thing, right? So all of the basic techniques, anyone doing like say a biotechnology undergrad will have those techniques in their CV. What will tell you. I mean, what will put you apart from that crowd is obviously if you can get an internship, and if you work like say 2-3 months in a lab, you obviously gain some extra experience, right? That's what's going to like put you apart from the crowd, and that's what's going to help you. So I think applying for a summer internship, I mean, if you have less than a year, I mean, good luck, because it's not enough time to obviously do an internship. But if you have more than a year, definitely I'd say spend a summer in a lab, spend maybe more even if you have the time. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think I'd just quickly like to add on to that by saying that even if you are looking for just a master's program, regardless, I think having in the like having some lab experience will really, really distinguish you from others, and it'll be extremely, extremely helpful in making sure that yeah, it really helps for sure.
Yeah, so I think Darshana has a question. So Darshana, can you unmute yourself and proceed with your question?
So for the master's program, do they expect like a minimum percentage we should have in our undergraduate program already?
That definitely depends on the university. So I think my best suggestion to you would be to like list down all the universities that your potential universities that you're looking at, and to see what they expect. As far as I know, yes, they will usually expect you to have at least like some sort of applications.
And also one more thing, how about the fee structure there? Is it affordable? Like we have any scholarship opportunities there?
Yeah, I think definitely. So, just like a quick relative comparison compared to the US, I think it's definitely way more affordable. Yeah, even like Manoj mentioned, all of my friends who did a thesis program or master or a PhD were able to cover their tuition fees and do their PhD with the stipend. So I think definitely in that way it's more affordable, the fee structure. In terms of scholarships, in my particular university, I'll just mention a little bit about that because I was in McGill, and I was in a province called Quebec where they have a lot of scholarships and more a little bit of more favoritism for Quebecois. So basically people from that province. So I would say that international students, and if you're not a Canadian or a Quebecois, it is a little bit of a disadvantage. So I think in terms of scholarships, international students, at least in the province that I was in, were definitely at a disadvantage. So the thing that you can do to support yourself is, I would say, if you do have the time and if you do have the energy and your lab work is not too busy, is to do a TA or an RA, because those they pay pretty well. And in addition to that, yeah, I mean, most of like I did a part-time job at a store uh, to support my living expenses. But then, yeah, let me just warn you that it can get really intense and hectic to manage everything. But I would definitely say, yeah, overall, still it's still manageable. I hope I answered your question. And yeah, Manoj, feel free to add on. Sorry.
Yeah. So for a thesis-based masters, you get paid. So I mean, if you still want to work after your lab hours, you're free to do that. I mean, you can always work as I mean, if you want to work part time after your lab hours, you're perfectly free to do that. But yeah, I mean, as Sharon said, the tuition fees is pretty affordable in Canada, and if you get a stipend, I think you can definitely cover that. In terms of scholarships, so I was in a province called British Columbia, so and there's an advantage if you're a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident. There's way more scholarships for you to apply to. But as an international student, I also got a lot of scholarships, so it's definitely possible. And a lot of those scholarships, I mean, if you're on a thesis-based master's program, it depends on the number of publications you have. So when you start your degree and when you do your work, if you have a few publications, you don't need to be like the lead author. If you're part of some publications, you definitely are at an advantage of getting those scholarships. So yeah, there are a few scholarships, but yeah, it's definitely an advantage if you're a Canadian or a permanent resident there. What else? What else did you ask? But yeah, in terms of tuition fees, it's definitely you can cover it if you get a stipend. Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you, Darshana, for your question. Kushi Goyal, do you have anything to ask?
Good evening, everyone. Most of my questions have already been answered. Thank you to the previous speakers. Just one doubt I had. I'm currently an undergraduate student pursuing BSc Life Sciences from Delhi University. And since like a course started online, we haven't been to college yet and we haven't had any sort of lab experience or anything. And I'm aspiring to do a master's thesis program from like a foreign university. So, since we do not have any such research experience or any such lab experience for now, can you suggest me something that I can like look for now to make a strong applicant? Maybe some like programs that maybe I should apply for to make a strong application.
I mean, which year are you in? How long before you start applying?
I'm in fourth semester right now. The fourth semester
Okay.
started last month only. Yeah,
Okay. So how long before you finish your degree?
it's one more year. Like it's the pre-final year of my course.
Okay. So I'm not sure about this. So in Canada, I think you need to have 4 years of uh, college degree. So I think it's like 16 years of education, so including your schooling and everything. So I'm not sure if you can apply to Canadian universities with a 3-year degree. If I'm not sure, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know if Sharon knows this. I'm not sure. That's what I've heard. You need to have 4 years of an undergrad, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, so I definitely I agree with Manoj. So it's really difficult if you it's harder to get like if you have a 3-year degree, but I'm also not entirely sure, but I think if you probably have like a year of experience in a lab after that or something, then you could try talking to the professor. But I do know that for some of the like programs, you could do like I for some programs you could probably do extra credits to try and. But I know it's also very very few. But generally, you will need 4 years of undergrad.
Yeah, I think
Following
especially if you want to do like a thesis-based masters, I think you definitely need 4 years of college education. That could be 3 years of undergrad plus 2 years of masters, and if you want to do a second masters also, I think it's fine. But I think to apply to a thesis-based masters in Canada at least, you need to have 4 years of education. Yeah, I think in the UK it's
uh,
3 years, but I think in Canada you definitely need 4 years.
Yeah, all right. Thank you for that information. And a follow-up question on that, like if I choose to do say a lab internship or a research internship or something after my degree, and I like do it for a year, and after that I'm supposed to apply for a say master thesis program in Canada. So, like, what my application procedure would be like? Would I have to only write to the professors and just like apply on the like main university website that about it, or there are some other formalities as well that I would have to fill?
See, I don't think lab experience counts as education like formally. So I think formally you need to be at least you need to have like a 4-year degree. So I'm not sure if like having a year of lab experience can substitute for that. But having a year of lab experience definitely helps your application. But I still think you need at least 4 years of college education. Like formally, you need to do like a degree. So it can be like a 3+1, 3+2, or 4. But you definitely need 4 years of, I think, formal college education, not just research experience, to apply to like at least a thesis-based masters. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to, just adding on to what Manoj is saying. So, can I just confirm with you if you're doing your BSc right now?
Yes, I'm doing my BSc.
Okay. If you're doing your BSc and it's not an honors program where you like, if you cannot add on another year, you cannot make it 3+1. My best suggestion for you would be to do an MSc after your BSc. And during your MSc, you can also gain some lab experience. So you're kind of like, getting both. But yeah, definitely, I think like don't do your BSc and go into a lab like and work for a year and try for a master's. Compared to that, if you do BSc and like yeah, definitely what Manoj is saying, do your MSc and then apply for your master's thesis. I think that would be the best thing to do.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Harsha, can you go ahead with your question? I think you joined first.
So, sir, actually, what's the basis of having a connection with the professor who is having a space in lab or something, space in university lab for my PhD in thesis if I have to pursue?
I think
Hello.
you were not clear with your question. Can you repeat it so that they can get clarified with your question?
Yeah, actually, I am asking how can we connect with the professor out there who is looking for a who is looking for a student for a PhD program, obviously, and I want to apply for a PhD program, and I have to look out for a professor. So how can we connect with that person? So how do we know that how we'll get to know about it?
Okay, so if you go to like the university website, right, you can see like the list of faculty in that university, and when you go to the faculty page, every faculty member, usually or at least the good faculty members, have a lab website. And in that lab website, they say what the kind of research they're doing, the publications they have, and they usually give their contact details, right? So there's usually an email address there, and you can write to them. You can write an email to them saying that, see, this is my background and this is my interest, and I like what you're doing, and I want to apply to your lab. That's how you connect. So you basically write an email, and yeah, that's how you connect. If that answered your question.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I am clear with it.
Sudarshan, you can go ahead with your question.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah,
Hello.
we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, okay. Okay. Sir, good evening. I'm a student in India, and what's my next approach to do research over there? And is there any steps students to do
So,
research in
so,
Canada? And
Sudarshan,
any yeah?
sorry, Sudarshan, your voice is breaking. I can't hear you. Like,
Hello, hello. Can you hear me now, sir? Hello.
yeah, I can hear you, but your voice is breaking in between. So yeah, just go ahead and speak. I'll see if I can hear you.
Okay, yes. So, I am an Indian student from India, sir.
Okay.
What's the next approach to do research in Canada? Is there any opportunity for like immediate doctors like that? Have you seen anybody?
So sorry, I just want to be clear. You are an MBBS student. You're a medical
So
student.
I think I
Okay.
can make it for him because I was able to hear him properly. So he is basically an MBBS student from India, and he is looking forward to do his higher education in Canada in the medical field. So he is asking about the opportunities there for a medical student, and whether you know details about doing a medical degree in Canada.
Okay, so if you want to do a medical degree in Canada, or you do you want to do research or do you want to pursue a medical degree? I just want to be clear.
Sir, like research, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So there are plenty of examples of people doing an MBBS and then going into research. That's definitely an avenue you can pursue. Because an MBBS is definitely more than 4 years. I think you can apply, especially if the research is like very medical and it involves like, I don't know, public health and stuff like that. I think you can definitely apply. I think you would be eligible to do a PhD. There are plenty of examples of people doing an MBBS and then going on to do a PhD. So if you want to do research in Canada, and if you have an MBBS degree, you can definitely write to professors. But yeah, just make sure that the lab that you're trying to apply to is also like very medical. It has a very medical background, and your background is appropriate. But yeah, you can definitely apply to a PhD if you have an MBBS. That's definitely possible.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So Vijayas, you can go with your question.
Yeah, hello everyone. First of all, I would like to congratulate you for such a nice program. So I'm working as assistant professor in Delhi, Jamia Hamdard University, and I'm basically I'm a wet lab person, so I'm a virologist. So now COVID time has taught us the importance of computational biology. So I wish to pursue my second master's in computational biology. And fortunately, in government service, you get a leave of 2 to 3 years to pursue master's program. So can you please let me know the feasibility of doing masters in computational biology given the age? Means like I'm in early 40s. So is it feasible over there?
So do you want to do like a thesis based? So you want to do research as part of your masters?
Ye-
I just want.
Yeah, yeah. So just want to gain grasps in computational biology so that I can add another dimension to my research.
Okay, so yeah, it's interesting that you asked that because in the lab, like in the lab that was next to my lab when I was doing a PhD, there was a PhD student who was in his 40s who was doing his PhD there. So I think
Okay.
he had his bachelor's in chemistry that he did like a long time ago, and then he did some kind of profession. I'm not sure of what that is, and then he came back to do like a master's and a PhD eventually in biochemistry, and he's doing pretty well. So he's working in structural biology. So it's definitely possible
Okay.
given, I mean, if the PI is fine with that. I mean, if you want to do research, I think a lot of how your application will go depends on the decision that the PI makes, so the lab that you're trying to get into. I think if the lab that you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to get into is comfortable with a person of your profile, it's 100% possible. I mean, there's nothing like after a certain age you cannot pursue a degree. Anyone can pursue a degree at whatever age that they wish. But for a thesis-based
Okay.
master's, I think if your PI is fine with that, you can definitely go ahead and pursue it. It's definitely possible. Yeah.
Okay. And with my background in basically I'm a microbiologist. So can I pursue masters in computer science, like hardcore subject? So any
So do you?
clue
So
about?
so if you want to like pursue a degree, so is this computational biology or computer science? Like completely computer science.
I would, so basically I'm teaching basic Python to undergrad students. So
Okay.
I would ideally go for computer science because I would like to have understanding of machine learning as well. Because in computational biology you will have biology related courses as well, and less focus will be on computational side. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So I mean, I think if you get into a lab that does a lot of computational biology, I think you
Hmm.
a lot of the stuff that you'll be working on is going to be computational. I
Okay.
mean, there is going to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
biology element to it. But I
Yes.
think if you want
Yes.
to do like a full-on like computer science like thesis-based research, I think
Hmm.
you need to have a like a bachelor or some degree in computer science because to get into any degree, they will
Okay.
expect you to have like certain courses. So if you want to be like in biology, you'll be expected to have
Mhm.
courses in your bachelor's in cell biology, microbiology, whatever. So if you want to do computer
Okay.
science, obviously you'll need to do some courses in computer science to be able to get in. You like not
Okay.
everyone can apply to a
Okay.
computer science program because yeah, they'll
Okay.
expect you to have some courses. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you so much. So I just can we have the email IDs of all the organizers so that if you have any query, we can get back to you guys. Is this possible?
I mean, you can always send your queries on Discord if yeah, I mean on Discord
Okay.
there's always a chat option, right? So yeah, you
Yeah.
can send us queries there.
Yeah. And one comment I want to make over here, if you all allow me.
Yeah,
So
sure.
So basically, I am doing some basic computational biology, and some of the undergrad students from Delhi University, they write to me for summer traineeships, and I associate them with my PhD students, and generally they get paper in 6 to 7 months. Means they work for their this thing. So my students are working on machine learning, Python, and computational stuff, and we validate them in the wet lab. So if anyone wants to come for training, they are most welcome to apply.
Yeah, so thank you so much for announcing this here. You can also make a note of this as a message in the virtual cafeteria chat or in the any other channels so that people can get to know about it. So
Yeah,
thank you so much.
definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Zwikraban, you have been waiting for a long time. You can go ahead with your question.
Hello everyone. Good evening. So I have a doubt that let's say I am currently pursuing my BSMS and I am currently in my fourth year. So next year I will be doing my masters. So let's say I pick up a subject, let's say virology for doing my masters. Can I pursue PhD in a different field, let's say computational biology or something else?
Yeah, so I think for computational biology, I think it's more important that you have some sort of biology background than a computational background. So if you computational biology, all of the labs that work on computational biology stuff usually come under, Department of Biochemistry or Department of Biology or something like that. So to get into the program, I think you just need a biology background. You don't need a lot of computational background. But again, if you want to do research and if you're trying to convince the PI to let them accept you in their lab, I mean, if they expect a lot of computational skills from you, then you need to have those skills. But if they just expect, some computation, and if you have a lot of biology, that's fine. Then that's also fine. But that's up to the PI.
Uh, and what if means want to change my field from virology to microbiology or something wet lab related field, some other wet lab related field?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, if you are you trying to do a PhD in the future, or are you trying to do masters?
I am trying to do PhD because I will be doing my masters in means it is an integrated course. So I will just continue with my PhD in abroad. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's totally fine to shift your interests. I think a lot of people do that. So yeah, I think it's totally fine. I mean, as long as you're able to convince the PI that you're a good candidate, yeah, you can go ahead, change your field. I don't think that'll be an issue.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Sharon and Manoj. So, Sharon, I found that you did your master's as a general master's degree in biotechnology, and Manoj did his PhD in protein biochemistry. So, how did you actually find your area of interest? And Sharon, why did you go for a general biotechnology degree, and why didn't you look for a specific area of research?
Yeah, okay. I think for myself, one of the things I when I was looking for thesis-based masters, and I was just looking for, I was really interested in neurobiology, and at that time when I was writing to professors, almost all the professors I wrote to, even though I had some mall bio experience, they all wanted, you know, some neuroscience experience. And I didn't have any, so I was just honestly finding it a little hard to land a thesis based masters. Maybe if I had tried other labs, I also kept it limited. So then I thought this would be a good idea because it gives me the opportunity to pursue a PhD in any field that I want. And the good thing about a general biotech masters is that both in your coursework and I know that officially in the program we cannot apply to be I mean under the program there's no compulsion to be part of a lab, but quite a few of my friends who did the non-thesis based masters, the general program, they still worked in a lab, so you don't get a stipend, so you'll be working for free, but you still do have that opportunity because you have the contacts, and so once you go there and the professor knows you, it's easier to get into the lab. So yeah, so because of all of those factors, I chose this program and kind of just gave me more options to pursue whatever I wanted after that. And so after when I was doing my program and I started doing my co-op, I mean, then again, I was faced with the dilemma of whether I should pursue a PhD or continue working for the industry. And I really enjoyed my job and I enjoyed my co-op, and so I chose to just continue working there after that.
Yeah, so since most of the students in this COVID pandemic situation didn't get a research experience or relevant internship, people are actually finding it hard to introspect and find their area of interest. So it would be nice if if you both can tell about how you found your area of interest. Like, though Sharon, you did a general biotech degree. You said that you had your interest in neuroscience, and Manoj, you did in protein biochemistry. So, can you give some advice, or can you tell about how you found your area of interest?
Okay, I think I'll let Manoj go first.
Okay, so my interest. So during my undergrad, I was basically passionate about like anything cancer related, and I wanted to do like something that could potentially facilitate like something therapeutic. That's what I wanted to do, and that was sort of like a vague interest that I had during my bachelor's. And so I think my like research experience and internships shaped my interest. So I started off by working at NCBS, and there I was working with like cancer cell lines and stuff like that. And then I got the opportunity to go to Germany with the DART fellowship, and I think that's where I started working on like proteins, and I really liked that over working with cells and stuff like that. So then I eventually, in my like, my next, internships and stuff like that, I kept working in like labs that I was doing protein work in the labs that I was working in, and I found that really nice, and I found that suited my, style of working and my interests, and that's what motivated me to, apply to the lab that I eventually did my PhD in. And I had absolutely no mass spec experience. I had no experience with structural biology. I basically had some like protein purification slash some protein assay experience before that, and that was basically it. But then I think I don't know my PI thought that that would be enough, so I eventually went on to learn all the techniques that I did. Yeah, so you don't need to know any you don't need to be an expert in all the techniques that you will work on in your PhD. But yeah, I think it's nice to have some techniques in your toolkit. So the short answer is my internships shaped my interests. Yeah, that's that.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, for myself, one, like, I mean, if you are not very clear about where exactly you're interested in, I think it would be a great opportunity, a great idea to do short-term internships, like summer internships for maybe, uh, I mean, I know that many labs do not accept, like, for unless because they're spending all that time and effort training you, so they'd want you to stay at least for like a few months. But I think, uh, in your college with the professors that you are working, you are in contact with, you could do short term internships. Just go to their lab, just spend a month or two there and try learning from people who are already working in the lab. And I think that can be really really helpful to kind of try to to see what kind of work they are doing. And yeah, like Manoj mentioned, you don't have to know all the techniques and everything before going into a program or before going into a lab. But yeah, this could be definitely useful.
Yeah, so that was a useful piece of advice. And considering the monetary aspects, how much will it cost overall to do a master's in Canada in INR? Can you give an approximate number, like in INR, how much would it cost overall for completing a master's in Canada?
Sharon, I think you should go for.
Okay, I'm just using my calculator to try and calculate it. Okay, so I think let me speak about the thesis based masters that I did specifically. So I think that was about like 20 to 25 lakhs just for the course fee. And so because for my program specifically, yeah, I wasn't with the lab, so I wasn't getting any stipend or anything, so it cost about 24 to 25 lakhs. And on top of that, I think living expenses, I lived in a relatively cheaper city, so I think about $500 a month, so that is so yeah, sorry, I lost you guys for a minute. Yeah, so I think about $500 a month. So that's around, I think I would say about $6,000 a year, and that is about another 3.5 to 5 lakhs.
Okay. Yeah, so given that PhD is a fully funded program, what is the approximate stipend a PhD student will get there? Manoj, can
Okay,
you
so
go? Because yeah.
yeah. So I think average across Canada. I mean, I'm not sure. I think average across Canada for like a thesis based masters or a thesis based PhD. I think the yearly stipend is I'd say roughly around $20,000. So I lived in Victoria, which is like on the west coast and like it's close to Vancouver, and that is like the most expensive part of Canada. Like Vancouver, which is like just next door, is like one of the most expensive cities to live in. I think it's like third or fourth on like the most expensive cities to live in Canada. So it was really expensive where I lived. But I think by sharing my house with roommates and stuff like that, I was able to like manage. So my expense was basically just my flight ticket to Canada, and I think my first semester fees. Even that I got back like eventually. So I'd say my flight ticket was like 50,000 rupees, and my first let me think. My first semester stipend was like sorry, my first semester tuition was like $3,000, which at the time like 50 rupees per dollar. I think was like 1.5 lakhs. So I think like like it was like 2 lakhs plus like the stuff that you take and all of that. I think like maybe 3 or 4 lakhs would be the amount of money that I spent at the start, and then I basically had like I didn't have to like take money from India or anything. I was basically covered by the stipend. So yeah, that was my expense.
Yeah, thank you. So VJS has a question. VJS, you can go. Go ahead.
Yeah, so just wanted to know. I have seen that some colleges also offer masters. If I specifically talk about, I was searching about computational biology. So colleges also offer masters in computational biology. So what is better, doing masters from a college versus doing masters from a university, and what is the difference?
Yeah, so colleges don't have like a lot of labs, where you can do research. I think in colleges you just take courses. In universities, universities are better funded, so they usually have like a lot of labs. So if you want to pursue research, as in you want to like do a thesis or something, I think doing it from a university is the best idea. Doing it from the college is
Mhm.
like you just want to do a few courses and then that's it. Then yeah, doing it from a college. But in the long run, I think doing it from a university is always better.
And what about tuition fees? Is it the same in colleges and university, or is there a
No,
difference?
no, definitely. I think colleges are cheaper than universities. Yeah, because yeah, that's why they don't get a lot of money from their students. I think, and that's why they don't have a lot of labs because they don't have a lot of money to spend. But universities, get a lot of
Okay.
tuition. They have a lot more students, so they have a lot more labs.
Hmm. Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd just quickly like to add by saying that I completely agree with Manoj. If you're really genuinely interested in, full-time research, I would totally discourage trying for a college. However, say specifically because you're talking about like computational biology, say you already have
Hmm.
quite a lot of experience and you're just looking for a gateway to come into Canada to get an industry job and you just need that one certification that's stopping you or something, then I think
Hmm.
like doing that certification in a college would make sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you're
That's
looking for
another
lab,
perspective.
yeah, if you're looking for
Yeah.
lab opportunities, I would definitely say go for a university. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Okay, so can you both name few good universities which are especially popular for biotechnological research, so that people can get to know a few names of the universities which are known for biotechnological research?
Yeah, so I think all of the universities have like some biology or biotechnology degree. At like all of the universities have like a biochemistry or microbiology degree. So I don't think that there's like any university that does not have anything biology related. But I think the popular universities, like the top universities, would be like University of Toronto, McGill, where Sharon did her masters. There is let me think. There is UBC in Vancouver, which is also like a top university. So top three would be McGill, University of Toronto, UBC. Those are the top three universities. And then there are like a lot of like other universities that are close to Toronto, like McMaster, I think is one. And I think there's like University of Guelph, which is also like close to like Toronto. So near Toronto area, there's like a lot of other universities, which are also like, even though they don't rank like really high, they have like a lot of nice labs within them where they're doing like really cool research. University of Victoria is also such university. It's not like a top university, but it's like a mid-tier university. But yeah, you can definitely find some great labs in these like small universities as well, because a lot of young professors usually start off their careers at a smaller university, and if those young professors have some really great ideas and they they're really passionate about the kind of research they're doing, they can actually like really like you don't need to be in a top university to like have like a great research experience is what I'm getting at, because I was like at a mid-tier university where like I mean I basically got to know of the university from like a coworker in one of the internships that I was in, and I had never heard of the city or the university before that. And yeah, it's like a very mid-tier university in Canada, but I was able to do some great research at that university. So if you're trying to do like something research related, the university really, I mean, it does matter to a certain extent, but I mean, I think the PI and the lab is what like really matters. You can always go to like a top university and be in like in like a bad lab, and also go to like a small university like I did, and you can be in like a great lab. So, I mean, if you want to do like a thesis-based research program, I think the PI and the lab is what matters the most. But yeah, if you want to know like a few universities, I mean, those are the universities I'd say. I mean, if Sharon can add more, then.
Yeah, I think there are quite a few. I mean, in addition to these, there are also provinces like there's University of Alberta. There's also I think University of Saskatchewan. So those as well, but definitely. But I would personally say that, like just Manoj mentioned, especially if you're looking for a thesis program, look, I think give more importance to the PI, their work, and the lab more than the university. I mean, definitely look at the university, but yeah, I think definitely look at the PI, the what work they are doing more than just where the ranking of the university is. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a detailed answer. Dashana, do you have any question? You can go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to ask one thing in general. So, how about the cold climate over there? Like, can we adapt over there? Because we are from India, and being in a climate like this, how can we adapt over there?
Okay, so again, depends on where exactly you're in Canada. Where Manoj lived was, I would say, much more forgiving and much more pleasant. So where I lived in Montreal when I started, like I mean, where I did my master's, and definitely, I'll be really honest with you. If you live in Montreal, Toronto, Winnipeg, Nova Scotia, wherever else. I think if you're not on the West Coast, it is definitely difficult. The first winter is hard. You will adapt definitely for sure. Get good winter clothing. Really invest in that. Don't think about all that. I think factor that into your expenses if you are going to live in one of these cities. Think about getting a good jacket for $200-300 the first time you come in itself, and also just be mentally prepared to know that it will be a long winter and you will adapt to it. I will tell you that it does get easier, and you just kind of learn little tricks and of how to deal with it as you go on. And I mean, another fun thing to do is also to indulge in winter activities. Take up skating, take up skiing as you stay here, and yeah, eventually, definitely, you will start enjoying it. Yeah, it's a lovely country, so for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as Sharon said, where I lived, like it snowed like 1 week the whole year. So, I mean, we barely got to see snow, and it was raining more. So, on the West Coast, the issue is that it rains, and it rains like any time in the year. So, you always need to be like, you need to look at like the weather report, and you might always need to like carry an umbrella or a jacket around. But it's not as nearly as cold as like Montreal. I think the lowest temperature that I've seen during my time in Canada was like -10. I think in other places in Canada it easily goes to like -30 or -40. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of adapting. I mean, if you come straight from India, like anything that's below like 10 degrees is going to be cold. So I think after your first winter, you should be fine, said.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
Dashana.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
So,
thank you so much.
this is my final and informal question. Did you both face any cultural shocks in the foreign country, and did you come across any kind of racism during your entire research career?
Okay, I can start. I think that so I think my answer is a little bit different only because I started in Montreal, and Montreal is part of Quebec, which is a French province. So I did struggle a little because Quebec was like people in Montreal basically would really appreciate it if you can at least try to speak French. So I have like gotten yelled at by a little by like couple of older ladies for, they're like, hey, you're in our province and you're not even trying to speak French. So I think you wouldn't face this problem, maybe New Brunswick, but otherwise that also maybe not as much as Quebec. I think nowhere else in Canada will you face this French problem, no other province. That was the only encounter that I had, but otherwise people are so friendly and lovely, and yeah, it's very multicultural, especially now I live in Toronto, and I think you literally encounter so many different ethnicities, so many different nationalities, and yeah, it's like completely no racism, nothing like that at all.
Yeah, like the province or like the region that I lived in, like you could definitely find like a lot of Indians. So it was not like a, I mean, because I had done some internships abroad, I mean, I didn't face like a massive culture shock. But I think if you're coming from India, if you go anywhere abroad, I think you will have like a little bit of a culture shock. But I think they're very welcoming. I think in Canada, at least, people are very welcoming, and they definitely help you adapt. They'll give you the time and the space to adapt to the culture. But yeah, but I definitely say you should like pick up like the stuff. I mean, you definitely need to like sort of adapt to the culture. You cannot be in any foreign country. You cannot be like I just be the same way as I was in India, and I'm just going to be like that. I don't think that will work in any country. So you need to adapt to like the culture of like the country you're trying to go to. So that would be my advice. In terms of racism, I've personally not faced racism. So I mean, cannot comment on like other people's experience. So at least like in British Columbia, it's very multicultural. There's like a Tamil community. There's like a big Sikh community. You can basically find people from all over India there. So yeah, that's so they're used to seeing people like us. So I don't think they're like really racist.
Yeah, so thank you for your answer. Nivedita has a question, it seems. You can unmute yourself, Nivedita. You can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
hear you.
hello to everybody. Yeah, myself Nivedita, and currently I'm doing my PhD from India, from IIT Guwahati, and I am about to complete my doctorate. So I just wanted to ask some questions regarding postdoc opportunities in Canada. So basically, like, what will be the way forward? Like, is it a good idea to like approach labs and mail the professors, or will there be like open calls? Like, I just wanted to know an insight on.
Um, so there's definitely possibility for both. There's sometimes PIs, especially if you're like on job boards or if you're on Twitter, especially. I mean, you can definitely come across like PIs who are like trying to recruit postdocs. They'll definitely advertise. But there are also PIs who don't advertise, but they have space in their lab. So if you really like a lab or if you really like some PI, you should definitely write to them, even if their lab website says I don't have space in my lab, it could just be like they could not have updated their website for like maybe months, so it's not probably up to date. So I think if you really like a lab, please write to them, even if they say I don't have space. I mean, the worst that can happen to you is you will not get a reply. So yeah, definitely apply to the PIs that you like. There are definitely PIs on Twitter or on like the university websites trying to advertise postings for postdocs. So that's also another way to apply. Yeah, and also one more thing. There is this fellowship called the Banting Fellowship, wherein you can. So anyone who's coming to Canada for a postdoc, I think, can apply to that fellowship. I think the amount of money that you get is like $50,000 a year, or six. No, it's probably higher. I think it's like $60,000 to $70,000 a year. So I suggest like definitely look into it if you're trying to apply. So the way that it will work is you'll get an acceptance from your PI of interest, and then with the PI, you'll basically discuss the project, write like a project proposal, and apply to the fellowship. So that's a way to get like your postdoc funded, so the PI doesn't have to pay you, and the PI would gladly, accept a postdoc who can work for them without, them losing money from their research grant. Yeah.
Was it
Thank
question?
you for the reply. I just had one more question. Yeah, is there any specific criteria, like entrance exams or something specific to postdocs, or is that just the PhD degree
No,
will be enough?
no. Like PhD is like basically like the end of your education. So postdocs are like you're working in a lab. It's like you're an employee basically. So postdoc is basically you're informally, you just apply through an email, and then if you're applying to a fellowship, you apply to a fellowship, or if the PI is able to fund you like themselves, then they can choose to fund you themselves. I mean, there's nothing formal like an application or anything. The PI accepts you, you go ahead, go to the lab and start working. It's not like a degree where you have to write an entrance or like fill in an application.
Yeah, so I think Nivedita, was your question answered?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for the answer.
Okay, so it's been 2 hours and I'm done with my questions. So, do anyone in the audience, do you have any questions? Or if not, Manoj and Sharon, you can add some final pieces of advice or suggestions for students who are looking forward to do their higher education there in Canada. Maybe any something you need to add on, which I have left in between.
Yeah, I think I would just say prepare well in advance. If you're in your bachelor's degree, uh, like think about it maybe from your second year itself. Start building your profile. Start working in labs that really interest you, and just get good experience. Start talking to people early. Like try to network, build a good community. I'm not very sure about academia, but I know for the industry, being on LinkedIn, just building that community, those sort of things really help. And I think, yeah, more than anything, don't be nervous. It's a beautiful country with wonderful people, and I'm definitely sure that you'll feel at home here. And yeah, feel free to reach out to any of us with any other questions.
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, I think even if you don't have experience, which is like totally fine, I don't think anyone is getting any experience. Even people in Canada are not getting experience because of the pandemic. I think showing genuine interest is like should be like the number one thing if you are not able to get experience. I mean, again, at the end of the day, if you're trying to get into a research-based program, you're at the mercy of the PI you're applying to, right? So I think you should just go ahead and try your best to convince the PI that you're genuinely interested and you would be like a great candidate to work. I think from my experience, that's the only thing if you can do if you cannot get experience, that is. But yeah, Canada is, as Aaron said, like a very like welcoming country, and yeah, it's like all the stereotypes you hear about like the US or the UK, in terms of like xenophobia or racism, I don't think applies to Canada. I think Canada is like pretty multicultural and they're like very welcoming. So yeah, Canada is a great place to be. I mean, if you can bear the weather in like a few places, I think Canada is a great place to be. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Manoj and Sharon. Actually, one of the person from the audience, Akshaya, it seems she was not able to unmute herself and talk, so she has sent her query as a message to me. So she is basically a bioinformatician and she is currently working on genomics. But it seems she is interested in neurogenetics lab at UBC, and she is asking about how to proceed in contacting the professors.
Yeah, I mean, see, like if you're really interested in like a particular lab, then I'd say just go ahead and write an email to them. I mean, I think if you have like some genomics background, and if you're trying to get into like a genetics lab, I think a lot of the skills that you have will definitely be useful. So just clearly like explain to them why you're interested, and like tell them how your skill set will help, work in their lab. So yeah, just write an email. That's all there is. I think that's the only thing between you being here and getting like an acceptance. Yeah, sometimes just an email. Like I basically just wrote an email out of nowhere and I got a reply and I got into my PhD program. So yeah, that's all that you need to do.
Yeah, so thank you so much for your valuable time, and it's been almost 1.5 hours of useful discussion. So I think I'm not seeing any hands raised, so all the questions are done. I wish both of you all the best for your career, and hoping to have many such discussions in the Discord server. So audience too, you can ask any questions or any doubts you have in the chat box in the ILN server anytime, and get your doubts answered. So thank you so much, and let me wind up.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. It was nice talking about like our experiences. Yeah.